you so much for joining me on the Creative Awakening Now podcast. I'm your host, David Matters, and I'm here to bring you stories, interviews, and insights relating to the topics of creativity, inspiration, and practice. My intention is to connect with other people who employ a heart-centered approach to the artistic process and to share this profoundly inspiring content with anyone who cares to hear it. I hope you enjoy. This is a dream, and a dream is never the same. My guest this week was Forrest Bailey. Early into his artistic development, Forrest was noticed for his eagerness to learn and master the guitar. Although initially enamored by classic rock and heavy metal in his teenage years, Forrest traded his cranked-up half-stacks and overdriven guitar for solo acoustic guitar in 2015. Upon discovering his new passion for the nuances that a steel-string acoustic guitar can create, he quickly found the home for his compositions. His unorthodox style of playing, which consists of using the body for percussion and strings for the bass and melody all at once, has led him to maintaining over 150 concerts a year and performing nationally from California to North Carolina. Following suit of his heroes Michael Hedges, Mckee and Jon Gomm, he is now a nomadic musician, captivating audiences and sharing joy with everyone he encounters. Most recently, Forrest has developed his technique on the harp guitar, an instrument comprised of a standard guitar and 6 extra sub-bass strings. This was gifted to him by Jorge Rosales, who saw his passion for the instrument. Forrest has been invited to perform on television on Good Day San Antonio, Texas, as well as music conventions such as the NAMM Show in Anaheim, California. My conversation and hangout session really with Forrest was super cool. We had a really nice chat. I go into how we met and everything in the podcast. He was busking in downtown Nashville, and I immediately loved his music and thought it was really beautiful, and went up and chatted with him, and I knew, just instantly knew he was a solid person and had a good heart. So I figured he'd be a good fit for the show, and he was immediately all about it. So it was perfect, and he came to my house, and we just had a really great conversation about his whole musical journey, and I haven't had anyone on the show that does his type of playing, which is really nice to have a different style coming in there. Really beautiful stuff, really percussive, really creative. So, I know you guys are going to love this episode. This is him playing right now in the background, and I have another song from his track at the very end of this episode, so stick around. And he also plays 3 or 4 songs while in our conversation live, which all sound great. So, super great. I hope you will check out his work. I'll have his website and everything up on the show notes. And he's in Nashville just for a couple more days, but he'll be coming back around, I think, in April. So, I know you guys will love this episode. Please check out all I got going on over at creativeawakeningnow.com. Check out some of my writings that I've had published, music from my band, Life Like Water. Sign up for the mailing list. Get yourself a free copy of my ebook that I wrote some time back. Short little ebook about creativity and plant medicines. And just keep on keeping on, doing the good stuff. Hope you survive through the holidays and are in a good heart space. That's what really matters for all this. So, much love. Sending out all my positive energy to you guys in this new year. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thank you, Forrest, for being here with me today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So I kind of, with this interview in particular, I kind of just want to set the stage for people, how I met you and how this interview came about. And so I was walking down the street in Asheville and was looking to get some food at the Laughing Seed, and it was closed. It was the one day, and I turned the corner, just about down on Patton, and I hear this lovely enchanting music, and I follow it, and there you are, jamming out with your wonderful guitar and your beautiful amp and your whole professional setup, and we start chatting, and your music was just, I don't know, there's something really special about that sound when you come upon it, especially on the street. It's really particularly special. So maybe you can kind of just fill in the blanks now, maybe just tell us where your creative journey started from, and kind of what got you, especially to your particular style of playing, but your whole creative journey up to this point.
Yeah, so I mean, what should we start with, like 5th grade, where I...
Wherever that works, man. As far back as you want to go.
Yeah, let's go back to 5th grade. So I got out of the extra hour of social studies by joining band.
Okay.
It was awesome.
Nice.
The parents wouldn't let me play drums, so alto saxophone was the next obvious choice.
Obvious.
Nobody wanted us to be practicing at home with as a young horn player. It's I have my parents to thank for letting me make those beginning sounds on the horn at home. That quickly led into nobody practiced at school either. We convinced the band teacher to turn it into guitar class. From there, I got a couple heavy metal albums for Christmas. It was actually Led Zeppelin and Aerosmith.
Okay.
And from there, I was just completely fascinated with the electric guitar, and so I played exclusively heavy metal electric guitar for like the first 9 years of my playing.
Nice.
Then my band member at the time, the bass player and songwriter, he turned me on to this guy Jon Gomm on the internet, and I didn't really check him out immediately at first, but then I discovered him on YouTube, and he's like got an acoustic guitar, and he's doing all this crazy tapping and shredding, and also extraordinary percussion on his instrument, as well as tuning and singing, and it was just mind-blowing. So from there, I all of a sudden started seeing the acoustic guitar as not only very cool, but exactly what I was looking for. The electric guitar, I always felt like there was like something missing. Either I needed a band member or something to pair it with. And I always felt like there was just, it wasn't quite there. But with the acoustic guitar, I'm able to access all the sounds that I need to immediately. And I was always very attracted to making the sound come across on one instrument to be enhanced by other instruments, but that was something that was very particular to me, is that the instrument and the part that I wrote should stand on its own. That led me to playing more solo guitar. I didn't realize until I really started exploring this that was actually more where my compositions fit.
The percussion, kind of the adding to it with the guitar.
That was a big part of it.
Yeah.
I was constantly thinking of melody and rhythm at the same time, and thinking about what more chord structures and kind of how to support my melody, and my bass player would be like, well, that's great. How am I going to sing over that? I'd always tell him it was his problem, not mine.
Yeah.
And then, this style, Jon Gomm led me to Michael Hedges as well. It changed everything for me. All of a sudden, there was a place for me, and where it really shifted was discovering that open tunings allowed me to turn off my guitar brain, and I could just go straight into the emotion of playing, and all of a sudden it was now emotions driving the music and stories being shown throughout the music instead of guitar.
Yeah. Not so much technique, more feeling and everything like that.
And it became, now it was no longer about, hey, look at the guitar. It was about, hey, listen to this song. It has a story in it. So that was a huge shift for me.
Yeah, definitely. It's such a, I don't even know at what point that style became popular with like Jon Gomm and Michael Hedges and stuff like that.
Well, Hedges came around in the early 80s.
Okay, that's...
percussion has been around for a very long time. It really started in flamenco guitar. But this modern contemporary style that we're seeing, of a lot of people call it percussive finger style or modern acoustic guitar, that really started in about the 80s.
Okay. Yeah, because I got exposed to it, I don't even know, maybe 10 years ago or something like that. You know, it was with, what's his name? I can't remember his name now. But he was one of those people that did the percussive guitar, and he did it right, you know, and he when I watched videos of him playing, I was just like, wow, that's a whole different approach to the whole musical spectrum, like you're saying, with more of emotion and more feel, and there's lots of technique and like technicality to it, but it's also, there's a lot of this like raw sound coming out too. That's not so much like oh, this is a scale, you know, things like that, which I really appreciate. And when I heard your sounds coming from the street, that's the first thing that drew me to it. It was like, from far away, you know, drifting down the street, especially, sometimes you don't even know what instrument's coming about. But coming to a guitar and it being that open, nice, like flowing, windy kind of sound was really cool. So at what point did you decide that you were going to be doing this kind of like for your life? I mean, I don't know if that's your ultimate goal or not, but you're traveling across the country right now, landed yourself here playing street music, so.
Yeah. So I think the very first moment I picked up a guitar, I knew that this was like the thing. You know, people ask you what do you want to be when you grow up or what do you want to do. There's this instant knowing of I'm going to play guitar. There was all of a sudden it was no longer any doubt in my mind of what I wanted to do but how I wanted to do it has shifted dramatically over the years. Coming from heavy metal, wanting to obviously be in some sort of arena band and, you know, the next Van Halen, and I've since been like, yeah, I'm just going to do what I'm good at.
Yeah.
And so to bring it back, it became I'm sorry, what was your question again?
Just, you know, like, what kind of, or at what point did it become known to you? And you already said that when you first started playing that this would be your lifestyle, but even, I guess, further to progress that question, you know, like now you're traveling around in your vehicle and playing street music and, you know, recording albums and playing shows and stuff like that along with it, you know. So how did that kind of all coalesce for you?
Yeah, so about 3 years ago, I switched over to exclusively acoustic guitar, and I remember saying, okay, I'm going to give it a year and see what happens, because when you go from electric guitar to only acoustic, it's like starting all over. Very little of my hand strength wasn't where it needed to be for an acoustic guitar. The strings are much harder to play on the acoustic. And only a few things actually were able to transfer. A lot of it, like finger picking, was fairly new to me. So there was a lot of development I needed to happen in my right hand. And I remember going, okay, I'm going to give it a year. And a place I was teaching at the time was they were open house. It was a music store. And they said, hey, we want you to play. I said, great, okay, cool. And I thought I had a band for it. They all bailed at the last minute. So... yeah, of course. and then I was like, well, I got the time, so I had like one more week until the show, and I put together like 3 or 4 songs or something, and played that solo. That was my first solo gig, and then the owner of the store paid me $60, and that was this like profound moment of realizing like, wow, like what's happening here has value. And then the whole not having to split it with the band was like a very refreshing feeling as well.
Yeah.
I think I remember spending about a third of that on pizza that night as a celebratory treat.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly on, I met my friend Adrian Ballou, who taught me a lot of the beginning techniques of fingerstyle, and he sold me some of my first real high-quality acoustic guitars. And after that, I was off and running. He actually moved away to Portland, turned over some regular gigs to me, and through having some weekly regular gigs, I started to really have to develop what I was doing, and I just kind of fell into it pretty quickly. Through there, I ended up starting to travel pretty close to immediately with that. I would go visit my friend Adrian up in Portland. That's where busking started for me too.
Oh, cool. Place to do it.
Yep, and then one thing led to another, and it went from full-time teaching and just a little bit of performing to now full-time performing, and every once in a while I get blessed to teach one little lesson here and there.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I have some more questions about it, but would you be down to play something? Play an original composition?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll play, I'm going to play a tune called Onwards and Upwards.
Cool.
Which is really about chasing your dreams and just moving forward with that excitement of not really knowing where that next step is going to show up,
awesome.
but knowing that it's going to be there.
Is this on your album, or is this?
Yeah, this is on the second track. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, man. That's great. I love that there's so much going on in that style of playing, and a lot of it with your right hand too. How did that, when you're coming from electric guitar especially, incorporating those like percussive hits and those what false harmonics, what are they called?
Yeah, artificial harmonics.
Yeah.
These are actually natural harmonics, technically. There are a few artificial harmonics.
And you're using
snuck in there as
just
well.
your right hand on that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of a tricky thing. Almost always, my thumb is my bass player, so that's responsible for strings 6 through 4. And then my left hand is playing this melody over. And I'm using my right hand to mute strings that I do or don't want to ring out, so I can control the length of the note ringing out. So if I did this all without the right hand muting, it's really messy.
Yeah.
So that's a technique that I picked up from Michael Hedges. He does a lot of right hand muting, and it really allows you to keep the note ringing out or stop it as you need. It's a lot more work, but it's what helps create that a stronger distinction between the notes.
Yeah, it doesn't all bleed together.
Yeah, and when I'm composing, I'm often thinking more of multiple voices and multiple lines happening rather than guitar chord and accompaniment with melody. It's more of 2 or 3 voices working together to create the song.
And what tuning are you in for that?
This one, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, F, G sharp, D sharp.
Nice. Yeah, it's such a beautiful sound, so open.
That's the secret. I think bar chords are a conspiracy.
Okay.
Yep.
Conspiracy.
I have proof. Yeah.
Love it.
So
I mean, technically, conspiracy theories probably shouldn't have proof, but we don't need to go there.
Conspiracy starts with you.
All right. Well, that's the style of that playing. It's got its own kind of like language and story built within it. And we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, but I mean, with that song, like, where does the inspiration for something like that come? And then you name it, and it has this whole thing. Your other song, you were telling me about this story. Like, do you have something similar with that?
Yeah. So this song was really written at a time where I was just coming out of a dark period in my life to a now very light and happy period, and I wanted to capture that feeling of the sun on the other side of the mountain pass. And it was this really beautiful thing. I remember just hearing this groove. I wanted to write a really groove-based song because a lot of my other songs aren't steady like that with a constant groove throughout. And this is one of the few songs where I don't use looper pedals, but I actually had to use a looper pedal to figure out how to play this song because I could do this. And I could hear it. I could hear the melody, but I couldn't quite execute it. So I had to record one part and then figure out how to do all that at once. So
yeah,
this song, I remember that main melody I just played over and over and over for hours. And then once I finally got it, you fall into this groove and you start to learn it. But oftentimes my songs are a good way of how I practice as well. It kind of drives what I practice.
So when you're feeling, or did you have that feeling as you were writing or before, or did it kind of come with the song, like the getting through the darkness into the light?
That's a great question. So oftentimes my songs reflect where I'm at or what I'm currently experiencing without me setting out to write about them. My songs are really just like the soundtrack to my life. So whether I'm in a really great state or if I'm in a really trialsome state, my music is going to end up reflecting that. But it's not always like happy writes happy music.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it's the opposite too.
Yeah.
So for me, I let the music go where it wants to go, and I let it come out how it wants to come out. I really feel like oftentimes my job as the composer is to get out of the way of the music.
Yeah.
Let the music tell me where it wants to go.
Yeah, I have a very similar relationship to songwriting, and on my show, I talk to a ton of songwriters, but actually not a whole lot of, and I know you said you sing sometimes too, so you must do some lyrics, but instrumental music is so interesting in that way because there's so much emotion to it, but there isn't like a defined category a lot of times. Like, this is exactly what I was feeling, or this is the moment I was capturing, you know, like, and I like to write like that as well, where it's just your life is kind of the fuel for the song, whatever's happening, and it's not like you set out with the intention of like, I'm gonna write this song about this girl or this moment in my life or this, you know, road trip or whatever it is. It's more of like a feeling that kind of comes about.
Yeah, it's more of trying to get to that point of feeling, narrowing down what feeling it is. And that's where the story really starts to take place in the music for me, is once I figure out what subject I'm actually looking to for inspiration or am actually trying to portray in the music. So a lot of my music is actually very thought out as far as exactly what I'm going to, or why I'm playing the notes, but it's written from a story perspective, not so much of a theory perspective.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I feel like something like that, it's kind of like, I don't know, you gotta see your way over it to even really know what you just left behind, you know. It's especially with melodies and things like that. You know, you get this little riff in your head and you get this little motion that's going on. Like, oh, I like that, but I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense until you finish it. And I've had that experience a lot where you look back at it and all of a sudden it's like, oh, you know, the natural conclusion of it kind of brings the story to life. That happens to me with lyrics a lot, actually, too. The melody will drive the lyrics, but I mean, everyone's so different with songwriting. That's why I love talking about it, because, you know, I have met lots of people who they're like, they have a whole technique, you know, they have a time of day, they sit down, they put in the hours, and they practice. You know, I had one guy on who's just absolutely amazing fiddle player, and I mean, he does a lot of Celtic and Brazilian music and stuff, but he also does classical music, and he was telling me that, you know, he practices for hours and hours every single day. You know, he sets a time and he goes for it, and he writes from that too, you know, like he has this whole regiment for it, and that's what works for him. You know, and I have a practice schedule too sometimes, but not like that. You know, for me it's more like, well, I mean, I have a family and stuff now, so it's a little different, but even when I didn't, I had this kind of relationship with it that was more like, I'll push through even the times I'm not inspired, and I'll put in the time just to make sure something comes through. But for the most part, it kind of comes to me. You know, I feel inspired. What is your situation like? Do you have something like that?
Discipline's a very important part of what I do. I notice that how often I'm practicing and the focus of my practice has everything to do with how productive I am as a musician. I don't like sit around and wait for inspiration to show up until I pick up my instrument. I have plenty of things to work on all the time.
Yeah.
But it's not always that I sit down with the intention to write. In fact, usually when I'm trying to do something else is when the inspiration comes. But I let the music, like if a new song, third time's the charm.
Yeah.
If a new song shows up, I put everything else down. And that's like regular day-to-day activities. Anything that can be canceled will be canceled. Because that window of inspiration and those songs, they need to come through. I don't know how long that window's open. And I find that it's a consuming process for me. It's in a very good way. And it's when a new song strikes, there's nothing I can do but play that song. And for me, I know that my song is going to... It's a new song when my guitar stays in that tuning for a couple days, and I just have to get it out.
Yeah, that's good. I know that feeling. How many different tunings do you go through?
I think I'm at 16 right now.
16?
Yeah.
In your live performance too?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm I'm a storyteller too.
Yeah, that's great. That's another topic that I like to get to with people is, you know, solo musicians, you know, it's like being on stage. How do you fill that space, and like how do you own that space to where it's not awkward for you or for anyone? You know, some performers you see that where even if there's a 5-minute lull where they're changing tuning or something, they still have this command where you're not bored, you're not wondering what's going on, you're not checking your phone, you're engaged, you know.
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of tips in that way?
Be yourself. I've never approached the stage with a point of trying to be anyone other than who I am. For me, I have nothing to prove. For me, the number one part of music in any performance is sincerity. I don't look for technicality or proficiency. I look for sincerity more than anything. That's what inspires me. I also like when I see something I've never seen before. But I don't set out with the intention to go on stage and show something that no one's ever seen before. My point is to tell the stories and to just be who I am. And I happen to have a platform to do so. So for me, music is just one way to relate to others. It's a means of setting up communication.
That's beautiful. I love that answer. That's great. How would you feel about maybe giving us another song in a different tuning?
Yeah, great. That's most of them.
Yeah, I figured it was. 16 different tunings. You got to be going through a fair amount.
So this would be another really good example of how, like, I, as a performer, how this might come across. Like, I'll start with retuning my guitar, but as I'm doing that, I'll tell you about how it happened.
About the song?
Yeah. Now, I should preface this with, most times I prefer to tell the story afterwards, because sometimes telling the story of the song can actually, I don't want to say get in the way of the listener, but it can give them these preconceived notions. And I love how instrumental music, how it affects me is I often go into these like introspective places, and I have my own stories and my own feelings about the song. And so I love to leave the space for listeners to be able to do that with the music as well.
Yeah, that's a nice thing. It's a kind thing to do to your audience.
I think music, it by itself has no agenda. And the more I talk, the more likely I am to have an agenda. And I don't think agendas are wrong. I just think that music, at its purest state, is simply a expression of the human condition. It's one of the most pure ways that we can just express our humanness. So that's what I love about instrumental music. Some songs with lyrics have their place too, but I really enjoy that music can just give that space to the listener.
Totally.
So that being said, I've managed to distract you from my tuning and not told you the story of the song.
Sleight of hand right there.
That's tips of the trade. So, okay, so here's the song. Thank you.
Yeah, I love the slide, pulling that in there and then sneaking it back out real quick.
Yeah, so this tune's called Covenant.
Okay.
And this was originally written for some friends of mine who asked me to play at their wedding. And I had never played a wedding before, and at the time I was writing one of your favorites, Permanence, also on the album, and that is not a wedding song by any means. And so I got so excited that they had asked me to play a wedding. It was such a huge honor that I ended up going home and writing a song for them. So with this song, I wanted to tell the story of people meeting and then merging as one. So you'll notice in the beginning of the song, there's these harmonics that ring out over the chord. And so my thought process behind this was it's not only one single melody in the beginning, but it also has this like really bright, I kind of picture them, they're like stars, and much in the way of like there's this grandeur of love when someone's looking all starry-eyed at the other person. There's this really like beautiful thing that happens there. As the song progresses, there's some kind of unexpected turns, much with how love often goes. There's just things that you just wouldn't expect showing up. Later on in the song, you hear the slide come in, and I put that in specifically as the honeymoon, as this moment of, I wanted this very exotic sound. And so that kind of, to me, like, took the main melody out for this walk, but in a way that was, like, very clearly, in my mind, the honeymoon of these people have, like, you know, now they've told their story, and now they're making a new one together. This is that part of it. Then later on in the song, you'll hear the double harmonic. And so that to me is like two people becoming one. And so it's the whole concept of marriage, of what that means to devote your life to someone else and to give that to them. So that's a good example of how my songs are very much story-based, rather than, I'm going to stay in the key of G major, I'm going to modulate to D in the verse. Yeah.
That's great. I love the whole progression of that song. It's got such a nice feel to it. I mean, I can see how it's written for a wedding. You know, it's got this uplifting kind of sense to it.
Yeah, wedding sound.
Yeah, wedding sound. Did you play it at their wedding?
I did, like 4 times.
Yeah. Play it again.
Yeah, there was even an announcement. It was like, you know what, I wrote this song for them, and this is the wedding, so I'm going to play it again.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, the different... Do you play slide for any other stuff? Or like much?
You know, the slide I'm fond of. That's the only one that it's compositionally put in. I don't play slide a whole lot, actually. Pretty much just right there.
Yeah. It's cool. It makes it special. You know, it gives it that kind of unique flavor that not every song is going to have it, you know. So when you pull it out, especially because it's only for half of the song, or not even half the song. So it's a nice element, a nice touch. I wanted to ask you another question about your tuning changes, because if you're, I mess with a few different tunings, and I also play banjo, so I have a handful of tunings with that. And where do you go, like, in your mind when you're writing songs like this? Like, how do you work with the different changes and things like that? You know, do you see it in patterns, or do you see it more in like, how do you see it?
So earlier I referenced about how these open tunings help me shut off my guitar brain. I spent so much time in my formative years of practicing all my scales and doing all the theory work that if I play in standard tuning, I'm constantly thinking about the notes, and I'm not as prone to just listen to the emotion. And not that those are two separate things, it's just typically much harder for me to connect musically. As where when I don't have the same random pattern or the same set patterns to follow, it gets me a little easier to just start thinking about it in the picture terms that I was talking about earlier, about how, you know, now I'm trying to tell a story with the notes. That being said, all the theory and the ear training is burned in the back there, so I'm constantly like, okay, I'm over my 6 chord, I'm over my 5 chord, and I'm thinking about the modulations that I'm doing as well. But I don't actively think about that when I'm playing it.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I write it, it becomes a tool, but it's very low on my priority list. Theory used to be very, very important to me. Now I really want to tell the story in the music, and that's what matters to me more than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's the whole point of mastery, of learning anything well, is knowing it well enough to where you can go beyond it. You know, you have the tools, but you don't need to employ them all the time. It's kind of just like, you know, subconsciously it's just there.
That can be a tricky thing in songwriting too, because the more you develop these palettes and different things that you can do within music, the more it becomes necessary to establish parameters. So that's another way that often incorporates into my songwriting of like, well, yeah, I could throw everything in the kettle, but is it all going to turn into a delicious dish if every spice is used, or is there certain spices that I want to highlight here, or is there certain techniques or certain chord progressions that I really want to focus on, and how can I develop these good ideas that I already have instead of like, here's a billion ideas all at once.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that's what makes it really nice about having 16 different tunings to choose from, because you're not going to be able to just throw it all in there with each one, I'd imagine, unless you have some kind of like deep mastery of each different tuning.
There comes a point with each tuning where I start to become far more comfortable with it. Dadgad is a very common guitar tuning. I'm very comfortable with that one. To the point to where I can really think about the theory within it. But oftentimes when I'm writing, I'll start off in a tuning and then I'll hear a note and like the chords won't make sense under my hands to play. So I will retune my guitar to where it's a comfortable place for me to play. Or sometimes I need a certain harmonic at a certain place and it's not working in the tuning that I did. So I'll change the tunings. But oftentimes during my writing process, I will change and manipulate each tuning until I find the one that works for that song the best.
Yeah, so you got a whole bunch of tools to cipher through if you need them.
Yeah, and then there's all the capos and other fun things that'll really keep it always fresh. I've yet to be bored with the guitar.
I believe that. I wanted to kind of go back to the busking element real quick, and we've already been going for a little while yet, but I just
thank you if you've made it this far.
Yeah, I like long podcasts myself.
I do too.
Yeah, I listen to a lot, so when people get into the juicy details, that's what's really good about it. And
nice.
For somebody who's traveling all around, and I was telling you earlier, I spent years busking and just traveling all over, and there's so many interesting things and people that you come upon in those settings, and it's some of the most, and it can be some of the most fruitful setting to be in for writing purposes or for just expression, and I know for me, I definitely found myself musically when I just didn't care and just kind of let it all go. Do you have any kind of thing like that or a specific story or event that when you were kind of getting into street music and stuff that really helped you open up, or just kind of direct you in that way? Because clearly you do a lot of it.
Yeah, I have this interesting dichotomy in my music life where I love concert halls, I love house concerts, and I love street performing. And they're all very, very different from each other. But what makes street performing special is that it really breaks down these barriers. It's people often are not expecting a musician to be on the street. The audience is often perceived differently. If you're standing on a stage at a concert that someone paid money to walk into the building versus you're playing the same exact songs on the corner of the street and there's cars flying by, people are often see it differently. But what I find the most enjoyable about street performing is it's so organic. The crowds, they build, and they ebb and flow. And the thing that why I do street performing is because I notice a direct impact on the people that I'm playing for immediately. I can see people who are walking by with maybe a frown or they're not feeling that great. And then they start smiling just because they heard music. So that for me is worth it alone. I oftentimes sell a lot more CDs on the street than I do at concerts, which is another, just an interesting way that street performing has worked out well for me.
Yeah.
There is different challenges as well. You have to be very aware of your surroundings because generally speaking, people are good-natured and most people will, step up if there is a problem. But there's been some interesting times where some people who were a little closer to the edge and a little more challenged were just starting to cause trouble. So you get times where like as an instrumental musician, the number one thing is like, do you sing? Can you play something that we can sing, or play something that we know, play something that you know, all these kinds of things. And the other day at the same place you saw me, the same day, some guy was like, hey, can I sing along with you? I was like, no thanks. I'm trying to just be really polite about it. I'm not there to make anyone's day worse off. I want to be a positive contribution any place I step into. And this guy's like, well, I'm just going to go across the street and sing along anyways. Free will. And then he raised his hand up. And I was like, okay. Like, there's nothing you can do. So that's where street performing is very, very different from, say, a concert hall. As where with a concert hall or house setting, there's this instant respect of the artist and the performance. And you can have that on the street as well. It's just you are subjected to more different elements. Yeah,
alternating factors that come in and out.
Yeah, but I really, really love street performing too. It's a very special thing that I find it ironic that some people look down on because it's one of the most pure ways of expression. Historically, this divide between performer and audience is a really new concept, only in the last 500 years or so.
Especially in the way that we do it here with big stages, big sound systems, and the kind of like the idolized separation between fan and performer,
talent or not, or perceived. So for me it really helps break down more of those, and that's another reason why I love house concerts so much as well. I really get to connect. On the street, I don't usually get to tell these stories too often. The concert, I do a little bit. House concerts, I really get to we get to actually know each other. And that's what I feel is so special. Yeah,
and that's one of my absolute favorite things about music and playing music is the communal aspect of it. It's obviously there's a certain amount of separation, like some drunk guy wanting to sing with you and not having any sense of boundaries with it. But when you can bring it into a house concert and it's this intimate kind of relationship where you're literally talking like, hey, let me tell you about this song. Oh, okay, I'll share it with you, and those kind of things. And even on a stage too, where people just, they're interacting with it, whether they're dancing or they're, singing along, whatever it is. I've always just had so much love for that element of music. And some of the best relationships I've ever had have come from performing, playing for people and then making friendships out of it, and there's this, I don't know, like the creative elements within us all, and if you can recognize it and respect it, it's reciprocal, you know. And I feel like it's just like meeting you on the street, where I was like, okay, I'm gonna listen. Okay, yeah, he's good. And then I went up and I chatted with you, and I was like, all right, this is a good guy.
Nice.
I could tell, like, just a few words, you know, you weren't like a prick, you weren't pretentious about it, you were super cool, and like, well, check out my amp, like, here, check this out, you know, and tell me about, those are the kind of things that, not to say that that's not like a natural expression that everyone has, but when you perform long enough and you deal with people enough and you get into those relationships, it's just kind of comes out, you know, you don't have to work for it, it's part of who you are, and that's something that I really appreciate about music and performance, you know. Well, we are getting down there, and I don't want to keep you too much longer. I don't know what you got going on tonight, and I do very much appreciate you coming to my house and hanging out and playing some music. Yeah. One thing that I always like to ask people, we can approach it however you want, but you know, if you have any advice for people who perhaps want to be performers or musicians or anything, or just life advice, you know, like a little nugget of wisdom that you've learned and that you can share with people. And it doesn't have to be like a direct, here, this is advice, but more like a feeling, you know.
Everybody struggles with doubt at some point. Everybody, no matter where they are on their path, is going to have those feelings of, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Is this really going to work? Is this what matters? And I found that amidst those, it's often when I'm looking as what am I getting from a situation that those things really arise, rather than what am I giving to the situation. So the number one thing would be to practice. Sit down and spend multiple hours with your instrument. A lot of people want to play at high levels, but they don't want to work at high levels. And I think it's very important to remember that there's only one way to get to that level of playing, which is a lot of hours. And to always stay in a place of learning, because you don't ever want to get there. If you get there, then you're done, and then that's it. I think the best thing I was ever told by this old wise man named Kunkel. He's one of those guys that only has one name. And he said, add to, never take away from. And so that's something that is altruism that I think really can benefit a musician. As for guitarists, tune and have fun. That's it. That's all you need to know. Tune and have fun. Yep, tune and have fun.
You got a fair amount of tuning in your life, I'm sure. So.
Yeah, well, I'm still out of tune, I'm sure.
Well, that's awesome, man. How would you feel about leaving us with a song?
Yeah, absolutely. How about a brand new one?
That'd be great. I always like to hear something fresh.
So this one... started a few days ago. And this was one of those, an example of a song that just really kind of consumed me. And I don't even have a name for it yet.
Good. Have you been writing it? You've been staying at Snaggy Mountain, yeah, since you've been there? Have you been would you write it up there, or was it somewhere in town? Or?
Yeah, it started in Snaggy Mountain. Snaggy Mountain is this artist haven where you can stay for really as long as you want. And it's a place that's kind of like more out in the woods. You can really just kind of get to your craft. And when you're traveling, it's not always easy to find those places to write new music. But I've been stationed here in Asheville area for the last month or so. And so this has been my newest composition, and it just started pouring out like 2 or 3 days ago. And so I've been like running to get more buckets to capture all the things that are just pouring out. But it's after a few days, it's really starting to take its shape, and I feel like it's ready. And anyone who's made it this far in the podcast surely deserves to hear a brand new song. So
that's awesome.
So
thanks for sharing it.
Yeah.
Thanks for being brave.
Yeah, it's just music. Let's see here.
Nice. That's a full body workout, that one.
Yeah, it's you just use what works.
Yeah. Well, it's beautiful, man. Yeah,
Thank you.
I really appreciate all of the songs and the stories you've brought us today, and I appreciate you coming here, like I said. Do you have any other gigs in the area or anything you want to point people towards, a website or anything like that? Or?
Yeah, Forrest Bailey Music. That's Forrest with one R, like the trees, Bailey like the drink. Music.com. That's the best place to keep in touch. You can send me an email straight through the website. I do all the social medias as well. I'll be in Arkansas on January 4th. I'll be back doing a West Coast tour from San Diego to Seattle in mid-January, or January through February-ish.
Cool.
It's all on the website. And then I'll be back in the Asheville area around April, so
Nice,
I like this place.
Yeah, it's a good place to be.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate it. It's always so nice to get people out of town and just like snag them up real quick just for this brief thing, and then they're off again. Like I've had a few people on like that kind of bring that drifting energy, So, and I have a soft place in my heart for that whole lifestyle. So.
Well, thanks for welcoming this traveler.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. So yeah, well, thank you everyone so much for listening, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.